agenda.
Right,
Right down the
and the
way.
minutes and all, yeah.
Yep.
Opening up the Board of Health on December 4th, 2024, roll call vote. Roll call.
Patrick Tropiano.
Susan Norrie.
Lawrence Perry.
Amy Vigant. First is discussion and possible vote on 37 Mayflower Lane variance. It's that, Brian, are you presenting?
Yes, good evening, Brian
Yes.
Grady, GAF Engineering.
Let us get the.
Oh, yeah. And did you have any comments, Mr. McDonald?
No, nothing special.
I have an extra one here.
Okay.
All we have this evening, this is new construction on a pre-existing non-conforming lot. It's only 6,510 square feet. So trying to squeeze everything on the lot. The lot has a little bit of a slope to it as well. So we've cited the leaching field in the rear yard because even though town water is available, excuse me, the home to the south does have a well. So we have to meet the setback to that, which kind of forces us to put the septic in the back, move the house towards the street. The variance we're requesting is the leaching field is 16 feet to the bulkhead. We do exceed the 20 feet to the cellar wall, but we are only 16 feet to the bulkhead. So that's the only variance we're requesting.
Isn't there one to the wells? Isn't there a couple of wells?
Next one.
Oh, it's the next one. Okay, all right, that's good.
Well, we exceed the
You
100
meet the
feet to
100
the
feet,
well,
okay. all right,
correct.
That's fine.
You know, we could relocate the bulkhead, we could move it to the south side, but there's a lot of slope on that side, so it would require a lot of grading to make it walkable and usable around the bulkhead, or we could move it to the north side. I'm just trying to preserve that so there'd be access maybe for equipment to the rear yard or park a camper there or something, so I'm trying not to disturb either of the sides with the bulkhead. So that's why we have it positioned in the rear and requesting a 4-foot waiver on the setback to the bulkhead from the leach field.
I'm okay with it, actually. You know, these things, when you have a non-conforming undersized lot, sometimes things happen. And effectively, when you have one that's a grandfathered like that, if you did this and you said, okay, you can't have it, and you couldn't do it, then you couldn't build on it. But that doesn't happen because that's effectively a taking by the town, and we're not going to be taking anybody's property today.
Just a comment, we have Jillian Morton present. Can you hear us? Can you?
I can. I wanted to hop on because I forgot I have, I'm on the Barth committee. And we have a meeting tonight too, so I don't know if you need to, so I'm gonna have to go. So I don't know if you want me to, if you already voted someone up.
No, we didn't.
No, we're fine.
You're,
You want me to make a motion? Because
no, we haven't finished discussing it yet, so just one
Okay.
sec. Nice to see you.
Yep.
Do you have anyone else? Larry, have any thoughts, any comments?
So there was a nitrogen aggregation plan on this for lot acreage? Is
Yeah,
that
we're
what that
doing
note says?
nitrogen credit, yes.
So do you have 30,000 total?
With the credit land, yes.
Okay.
Explain that, please.
So this is an undersized lot, it's only 6,510 square feet, and you need 30,000 to meet nitrogen loading. So that there's a plan, and note 6 is an easement, nitrogen credit land. So Title V allows you to do a nitrogen aggregation. It just didn't say how big that lot was, but I assume it's gotta be what, 20?
Yeah, it'll get us to the 30,000,
So
just in a little, just a little bit.
I still don't understand the nitrogen credit
The
land.
lot's located in zone 2, so you need 10,000 square feet per bedroom in a zone 2. So this lot being only 6,500 square feet, Title V allows you to apply credit land elsewhere. So we have a property in Onset where we're getting the credit land, which will give an aggregate 30,000 square feet. That plan and an easement gets recorded at the registry of deeds against that property, preserving it as aggregate land for this.
Oh, interesting.
So nobody can do anything with the aggregate land is what happens.
So it has to be in the same town, as the law, so it has to be in the same town?
It should be in the same zone too, actually.
Yes,
Okay.
actually, yeah.
That makes sense. Somebody owns something out west, that doesn't count.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never seen that before, or,
Yeah, the whole premise of nitrogen issues is about having 10,000 square feet per bedroom. And that's what I was trying to bring up in all our conversations about this and how we were worried more about a wetland that was 150 feet away rather than the nitrogen loading on
Correct.
the lots that we were looking at. And I think the nitrogen loading is more important, and then the distance to groundwater is more important than trying to protect a wetland that's 150 feet away.
Not to mention that's gonna get the benefit of the nitrogen.
Right. So, anyways, in this case, they have the nitrogen credit land, so technically they meet the state requirements. The only thing they don't meet is the variance. And technically, we're not supposed to approve variances for new construction, but this one's pretty minor. It's just be a matter of if we make them move the bulkhead or not, so they don't have to do the variance. And in this case, I mean, they could move it, but you know, I don't know if you'd looked at doing a walkout over there, but the grading, like Brian said, it'd be better to have a bulkhead off of this side than it would be over here where the ground drops off.
I mean,
I'm okay with it if the board is.
fine. I think it makes sense. I would entertain a motion unless anybody has any other questions.
Nope. You want me to do it? I'll make a motion that we approve the 4-foot, from 20 feet to 16 feet to the bulkhead on the thing. And that we make note that it has a nitrogen credit, and that also that it was a non-conforming lot that was grandfathered. Because I don't want everybody coming up here with a property and they don't wanna move things around and expecting to get a variance.
Yeah, they do have the buildability letter.
Exactly.
Yes, they're all.
We wanna make that clear. Don't come running.
I'll second that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I just realized we need an RLS stamp on this or a waiver for that policy we have that requires an RLS stamp. Unless you can put it on the as-built maybe.
Yeah, I can get you stamped, sure, that's not an issue, but I can.
All right,
Just
yeah,
a
and,
local
I'll
requirement.
make my motion to include the RLS stamp,
What is an RLS stamp?
Second as amended.
registered land surveyor.
and roll call vote,
Yeah, Patrick Tropiano, yes?
Jillian Morton, yes.
and Amy Viga, yes.
Perfect.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Yeah, when I get that approval letter, I'll add the.
No.
Okay, so technically speaking, it is going to be 40,000 square feet.
You want this back?
So,
That is,
Dr. Amy, I don't know if this is where I can make the motion to move someone up or I have to head out.
We're
Or if you guys
okay,
wanna
there
do
are
it?
two of us, so, we don't need,
We're
we don't
good?
need to,
Okay.
that's why we didn't change anything.
Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Is a
Thank
Alright,
credit.
you
guys,
for
sorry
coming
for the
on.
conflict.
Thank you for coming.
Yep, thanks.
That's what they do, they take it as credit.
Thank you.
The next is discussion and possible vote on 85 Blackwell Pond Road variance request. Good evening, and
This is the interesting one.
you're Richard Sharon.
I'm Rick Sharon, from Sharon Associates. Good
How are
evening.
you, Rich?
And Mr. McDonald, do you have any comments before we start?
I would defer to Mr. Sharon. I'll let him start. It's
Okay, perfect.
Very small lot, Blackwell Pond Road, opposite the pond.
I can share.
These are odd lots over here because the street actually cuts through the lot, right, so I don't know what the arrangement is there, but that's how the deed's written. We had a problem on this one because not everybody is tied into town water. We have town water supply out there, but not everybody is using it. So this neighbor is tied in, this neighbor was not, so their well's been located. Also, the neighbor right to the south of them, this was Mr. Pitts over here. He also has a property behind him So he had two wells that were both less than 100 feet from the existing cesspool. The existing house is a two-bedroom house, has a cesspool at the rear. And that cesspool right now is 58 feet from the nearest well, and it's 85 feet from the second nearest well, over 100 feet from this one, and over 100 from the other well out in the back. So what we're doing here, because we can't get a 150-foot setback from the pond, again, this pond level we're showing here was taken about a month and a half ago, so it's much lower than what it would normally be. So what we did was, in the interest of being conservative, we took the retaining wall that runs along the back side of the property down here by the beach. We said that's the maximum extent that it can go. Then we took 150 feet from there. We couldn't get 150 feet away with the system. So we're proposing to use this is a Noeco Singulaire. You've seen a few of these. We use the Noeco Singulaire for the denitrification. And we are taking the credit for area reduction on this, which reduced us down to, I'm just looking at,
What's the
and I
percentage?
have the wrong plan right here. This was the plan without the area reduction. The area reduction allowed us to take this down to this size. Our setbacks basically don't change a lot. We go from 58 feet on the nearest well to 64 feet for proposed distance. And for the second well, we go from 85 feet to 89 feet. However, we got a cesspool right now that's less than 100 feet. We're gonna have a denitrification system, we're gonna have advanced treatment, we have a 3-foot groundwater separation. So much better control of what we actually do. And a little bit of increase in setback also from the two wells. So that's two of our variances. The third one is, in order to get a little bit more a little more setback from Mr. Pitt's well, the closest well, we've asked for a variance from the side setback down to 6 feet as opposed to 10 feet. So, yes, we notified both neighbors. This was Mr. Fusco on one side, and Mr. Pitts has the two wells on the other side.
You haven't asked them if they wanted to get hooked up to town water?
I mentioned it to Mr. Pitts, and
Yes.
we
He's the one
considered
that
that at one
matters.
point. All right, I think if the buyers had had perhaps more time to try to work that out, they might have done that. But he said when they cut the water line in, they did put a tap there for him, but he wasn't prepared to put it in. And I'm just judging from the general condition of the house and everything, I don't really think he had the wherewithal to do it, although I had suggested perhaps that the buyers of the new house might consider doing that as opposed to getting a denitrification system. But it didn't really, if we tied him in, we'd still have the one at the rear, would still be 100 feet away, so we'd have to tie in both houses. He has another house further back in the rear. That one doesn't have a tap, so that'd be the expensive one. So we could get rid of one of them. Theoretically, maybe an $8,000 to $10,000 expense to tie that into town
You'd
water.
still need the denitrification because of the separation to the pond.
Correct. And has anyone checked their wells? This was quite close to the old septic system.
No, but generally, we generally figure that if there was an issue with the wells right now, we're dealing with a cesspool. We're gonna get rid of the cesspool.
I know, I
So-
realize, but it's amazing how close they've been all
Yeah.
this time.
Yes.
Might make sense for the owners of the other properties to check their wells.
He told me he had some great water. I asked him, he said he loved the well. He said it's a shallow well, and again, another reason probably for concern.
How about
Are there-
there's not a well on the property, they've been tied in, right?
This, the subject property is tied in. They have a
Right.
well, it's an irrigation well, but yeah, both, that's still well, actually, it's still there, but in the basement, you can see where the piping had been redone to come into where the water line is coming into the
Right.
house.
Do we have are there any requirements for making or asking folks to check their wells if they're within a certain footage of septic
If you
systems?
do a Title V inspection, if they're within the 100 feet, you have to do a well test. It's a requirement of the inspection.
Well, we know they've been within 100 feet.
This is less than 50, it's not
Right.
even, we couldn't even grant a variance to
Right.
this if we wanted to.
Actually, it's 58,
From the existing pit to that well on the neighbor's property?
yes. The closest, you see existing is 58 feet to house 87's well.
Oh, you're talking about, no, I'm
Yes.
talking about number 87's own well and own septic system.
Oh, well, that's
They're less
different.
than 50 feet apart.
Right.
Yeah, so
They
how would
really
you,
need to be tested. This is separate, but
Hmm.
while we're seeing this, I just think it would be silly not to note it and have somebody go check it out and make sure that they get tested. But we'll come back to that, if that's, right?
Yeah, well-
They're very close.
Yeah, well, they're beyond the 50 feet, so you don't, it's not a requirement, but I mean, they got notified, obviously, when they got the letters, that they were gonna have some issues. So, and I don't see anybody here at all. No, is an attendee up there? Who's the attendee? Is there somebody online that might have something to say about this?
There's one person online, they have not raised their hand to speak.
Didn't raise their hand? Okay, then,
The 51 and 58 foot, that's to the well, the existing that they use, the homeowners that they use just for irrigation, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
yeah, I mean, some of this gets to be pretty crazy.
Let me clarify that the 51 feet is the new secondary treatment unit to Mr. Pitt's well, so that's over 50 feet away.
Right,
That's just a tank, though.
Just the tank.
That's self-contained, that
Right.
doesn't leach into the ground, so
But
that's not
that's-
really a threat to the well.
right, and the well there is just used for irrigation anyway.
Yeah, we haven't shown any setbacks on there because you see the 25-foot zone around that, the 25-foot well setback for irrigation use doesn't have anything within it, so that it's clear at least as far as our irrigation.
That's the
well.
locus on-site well you're talking about,
Yes.
is
Right.
irrigation. The one for
Yes.
number 87 is a potable well,
That's correct.
but it doesn't meet our standards for its own existing leaching to its well. So that technically doesn't even meet the standards for the housing code, minimum occupation requirements.
Oh, I see, the two right near, right, the
Yeah.
87 one, you're right.
This kind of alerted us to another problem.
Mm-hmm,
Mr. Pitts, you said there's two houses on one lot?
No, he has he owns a lot to the rear, and maybe we shouldn't have put a dotted line in there, it probably should be a solid line, but there's a separate well for that house,
So there's two lots in common ownership,
yes.
and they have two wells and two houses, and one of them is non-conforming.
Right.
And it's gonna be made more non-conforming.
No,
No,
less non-conforming, we're gonna increase the setback from the subject septic or sewage disposal system to his potable well. Right, we're going from 58 feet to 64 feet.
This reminds me of Lakeville, every time you look at one lot, there's
Oh, yeah.
3 non-conforming wells.
Every time you get near a pond,
It sure
that's what,
does.
this is where we run into when we
Yeah,
get
these
these.
tiny lots are just the worst for wells and septics, it's a nightmare. I don't know if he said his water was good, but I don't know the last time he tested it. But the Board of Health does have oversight for private wells, and we have to sometimes protect people from themselves. If,
Mhm.
I would mandate a well test for this
Yes.
well. And I don't see how we could even approve this, it being less than 50 feet to its own leaching system on number 87. I'm not talking about your lot, I'm more concerned about the neighbor's quality of water right now. Unless he can tie into his other well on his other lot, that might be better, or he should tie into town water if he can.
How do we know where his leaching system is?
We
This
have
is what,
located
right
his-
here?
his
That's it
pit-
right
They're right
there,
there. Oh,
and that's
right,
less than
okay.
50 feet to his own well,
Sure.
right here.
So can
We
we?
can only give variances down to 50, it's supposed to be at least 100 away. So this is a dangerous situation,
Mhm.
especially with a shallow well.
So can we ask them to come before us, the owner of house number
they
87?
don't have to do that, they don't have to come in
Or,
front of us.
no, they don't have to come,
No, we can
We
have
should-
conversation through
Or-
our agent, but he'd be out of his mind to come in front of us.
all right, or at least have them go look at that, we have tested
I
of the
would
well.
suggest we mandate he tie into town water, or we'll mandate a Title V inspection on his system, and it's gonna fail, cause it's less than 50 feet to
It's
his well.
absolutely gonna
So
fail.
either way, he's
But
gonna.
we can do that separately, he doesn't have to come in here to do that. You can have that conversation with him, Patrick.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see, looks like it's all original from
It is, it's all original.
when they built this house and
Yeah, they did a lot of that stuff. We had a
Never
lot of
was.
them out at
And certainly if he
Rose
hooks up,
Point. We used to
The
have them
problem goes
on
away.
top of each other. It'd be 40 feet from them, 35 feet.
At least for the well problem, we can't guarantee a septic's gonna last forever, but
Right,
We don't have to mandate an upgrade on a septic at this point, but
Well, it'd be for his own benefit to have this well tested.
and Mr. McDonald, you're okay with contacting him and giving us an update after
I'm just
that?
grabbing the information off the assessor's site right now.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, okay.
As far as this plan is concerned,
Uh-huh.
I think he's done the extra to try to minimize the impact. And being that it is what it is, and these are I hate these ones, I know that you probably do, Larry, too. We hate that this happens, but it is what it is, and we have no authority to make a taking and take your property, because you can't make a septic. It's just not the way it's done. So I'm okay with what he's done here, what he's tried to accomplish, so. The rest of you guys have to make your own decision. Of course, one of the nice things is, I don't know if you noticed, but the percolation rate was 15 minutes an inch. That's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Yeah, we were surprised. I thought we'd have nothing but
If it
sand
was
out
less
there,
than
coarse
2,
sand.
I'd be very worried, but less than 15-minute perk, that's like perfect for this lot. It's what, you couldn't be better.
Any other comments? Anyone? Mr. McDonald or Dr. Torrey? That's good. Any comments?
no, I
Yeah.
just think we should definitely send a letter to Mr. Pitts and inform he needs to connect to town water, or we would mandate a Title V inspection, and then he'd be on the hook for a septic and water, which would probably be the resulting, so.
Right.
For his own benefit, I think I had to
Okay.
actually file a self-abuse once against somebody who had a contaminated well and refused to hook up. And then, we're mandated reporters, so in certain cases, when I got the well report back, I was like, a lot of people think their well water is great, but they don't test it for everything they need to test for, and not as often as they need to test. Especially with shallow wells are extremely susceptible to bacterial and nitrate contamination.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well, thank God.
And for stamps on this, we have all the
This one needs the RLS as well.
right, and it's 2-bedroom.
Can I ask if the RLS is really needed? This is a completely bounded lot. You said concrete bounds on all 4 corners of the lot.
There's a deed restriction included in this thing.
2-bedroom.
There's
Yes,
a 2-bedroom deed
Two-bedroom.
restriction
2
already in the packet.
Okay, and it references the singular O&M for the life of the system, or it should. If not,
It doesn't, but it should.
then another one would have to get recorded for
there's
that.
a separate one for that.
The O&M, yeah, because we've probably been remiss in not getting those done. So last week, we kind of got a realization that we're gonna do it from
I
now
didn't
on.
see this before, okay.
All right? All right, you want me to do this?
Yes, please.
All right, I
Excuse
move.
me, could I ask if it is, can I ask for a waiver from the requirement for the PLS stamp because of it being totally bounded? I got concrete bounds on 4 corners here.
Well, the requirement is that it has an RLS stamp.
That's for all plans?
That's a requirement that we can't waive. You know what I'm saying? It's what they want, especially on anything that's undersized. You gotta have an RLS stamp. Now, if you had a 3-acre parcel and you were putting one in the middle, we'd probably say, well, all right, we're okay with that. But if the plan requires an RLS stamp, which it does, you gotta have it. All right, sorry to say.
And I somehow think it makes sense, because especially on the smaller lots, there's more room for error, so.
Okay, I move the following. To allow the leach field to be less than 20 feet from the cellar wall, that being 8 feet. To allow the leach field less than 10 feet from the property line, that being 6 feet. to allow the leach field less than 100 feet from the well lot S9 down to 60 feet, and and to allow the leach field less than 100 feet from the well at lot S10 to 89 feet, okay? That he requires an RLS stamp, and that he updates the deed restriction to include the nitrogen system. Okay, and then I would also like the health agent to get a hold of the gentleman in house number 87, and tell him that we wanna see a well test. We will probably end up having him do a Title V inspection.
Can I
Or
ask how
is-
much a well test costs?
Depends what you're testing for.
Exactly, yeah.
So is it requiring a well test versus requiring that they hook up to water?
Well, we'll have to see what happens. I mean, if,
Be-
you know,
Can we keep these separate?
we
for-
can keep it separate.
And let's vote on
Yeah,
this
sure.
first, and then we'll go back
Okay,
to
I
the
withdraw
other.
that part from my motion, and we'll vote on this, and we can talk about that
Right,
separately.
okay.
Although, we really shouldn't be, because it's only relevant to this hearing that we're talking about.
Okay.
So once we close this out,
So,
we can't talk about it anymore.
so.
Well, we do have oversight on private wells, so.
Yes,
do.
but
if we-
but it's not on the agenda.
Right,
So while we've got this in front of
Alright.
us, we can talk about
So
it.
let's hold off for a second in the final vote then. We had spoken a little bit about maybe requiring them to hook up to town water instead of just getting a well test. So this is a little bit different from what I had heard before. Let's discuss that point.
Well, there's gonna be an issue, because the guy's gonna say, I've had it forever, and I'm staying here, and there's gonna be a lot of argument about this. And we don't know whether, if the well comes back, and what if the well comes back and the test is perfect? Then what?
Isn't there a rule though that they have to be a certain distance away from
yeah,
one another?
we couldn't give him an after-fact variance down
We don't
below
have to give him a
50 feet.
variance at all, he's existing.
Well, there's no grandfathering for public health, so if we find out about a situation that endangers public health, I think we have the obligation to act on it. I mean,
It's been there for how many years? I don't know how many years.
But
Bob.
that doesn't, yeah.
But
just
it's
because-
been there for so many years, and if it isn't causing any problem, then it's probably not gonna be causing any problem. And then you're gonna tell them, well, okay, go turn into town water.
how do you know it's not causing a problem?
Well, we don't know, that's why we're talking about
mean-
having the guy do a well test.
Right, but a well test is a snapshot in time, I mean. That doesn't, I mean.
If the
people-
well is contaminated, it's contaminated.
That's why town water, well, under the housing code, it says the minimum standards for housing, it should be a municipal water supply if available. And then if it's not available, a public well. In this case, we'd have to grant variances to the neighbors, to him, to everybody. So there's no way, I think, that the board being in charge of private well water and water quality and the minimum standards for housing, this doesn't meet the minimum, even if it tested okay for one day, it wouldn't have a conforming sanitary septic system under Title V, which is also in the housing code, that you need a conforming sanitary septic system. So that's where it gets a little dicey, cause we don't just have Title V to deal with, we have our private well obligations and our housing code minimum standards for occupation standards. And when you put all those together, it's about risk assessment, that's our job, right? It's all
Could
about-
we recommend that they, or require that they either hook up to town water or have a new Title V inspection? Then
Yeah.
they could choose which one they want, it's giving them choice.
that's what I was.
It's gonna fail the Title V.
Well, I understand that, but it's giving them choice to do one or the
It's
other.
not giving him any choice.
Well, I can tell by the elevations and the location here that leaching pit of this is pretty much in groundwater, based on the information he's provided with his soil logs
Yeah,
and the
yes.
topography, it would fail. So now he'd be on the bucket for both a septic and a well, because
Exactly.
then he'd have to put in town water and a whole new septic system. So I was just trying to, in the interest of saving him a little.
I
Yes.
don't work for Mr. Pitts, but I did meet him when I was out there. He's a very nice gentleman. I feel sorry I'm bringing this down on his head. But in line with Mr. Tropiano's suggestion, could he be asked to provide a well test annually? And if it fails, then some action has to be taken. Is that maybe something that protects his health and addresses some of your question? Because he's asking for nothing.
I mean, I think it's like mandatory reporting. We have an obligation to protect public health, you know? It's not like we're a different agency. This is about the minimum standards for housing and protecting somebody even from the self when we have to. And there's no grandfathering for public health.
I just
So-
think an attorney would turn around and say, if his water is fine and he's willing to test it every year, that,
Well,
and he doesn't have the means
Would you
to
put
tie
on
in.
paper that the water is fine and will be 365 days a year, being that close to his own septic system that's in groundwater and a shallow well less than 50 feet away? You know what the zone of contribution is, you know hydrogeology, just like me. What are the odds that that well isn't contaminated with nitrates and bacteria, even if it tested good for one day a year?
Well,
And there are reasons why they have the rules the way they are for that footage. This is not my expertise, but from what I'm hearing, the rules are pretty set. And we do have, that's the reason why we have town water. So maybe there's a way to help this person with
If it was more than
grant
50
or whatever
feet,
to
we
hook
could,
up.
yeah, we could consider it and discuss it if it was more than 50 feet, but Title V doesn't even allow that. If you're doing a Title V inspection and the well is greater than 50 but less than 100, you can test the well, and then we can look at nitrates and coliform and see if it's been impacted.
Well, I have a little issue because I don't know, let me see, is there a scale on this thing? Yeah, there is,
Yes,
right?
there is.
20?
So,
This right here is 25, this right here is 25.
so, you know, it's pretty close to 50 feet. And without an RLS, we don't know whether it's 50 feet or not. I just put my thing on, it looks like.
Looks like about 2 inches, right?
I got 40 feet with no problem. And then if you take the 40-foot mark here, like so, and you do this,
We don't have a scale in here.
it's beyond the 40.
graphic scale on the plan.
Well,
This
it's
is
just-
25, you take
it's
the
just
center of
about-
the,
It's just about 40 feet. So it is under 50.
yeah, it's definitely, this
It's
is
definitely under-
25 feet.
It's under 50.
Yeah.
If in fact you located it properly, it's 50, it's beyond the 50. It's only 40 feet. And I'm assuming that you located this properly.
It was located in the field.
Yeah, it's less than 40 feet to the edge of the leaching pit.
Yeah. So it is short.
Assuming your plan is accurate. We didn't do an RLS stamp, that was just a little dig on the RLS. that's
I
all.
know that, I kinda threw that in there a little bit myself.
Nothing's gonna change on
Well,
this
I
one.
think that's why Amy is right in saying, he could have the choice to do a Title V and prove, and in which case,
Somebody would measure it.
I would say either
say
or,
specifically what the distance was.
either or, then it will come back before us anyway.
But most likely it would fail a Title V, and I didn't wanna open that can of worms
Right.
for him.
But if he hooks up, then, so if we hook up to town water, that's the safest and.
You know what, let's require him to have a Title V inspection. And when he does the inspection, he has to have a well test, it's a requirement because it's short. So we'll have a well test and a Title V, right? And then we'll see what happens. Then it'll get measured properly in the field from one to the other. If it's 50 feet or 43 feet or whatever it is, we're gonna know what it is.
And then it's gonna get kicked back to
And-
us
and
under
then it's
further
gonna get picked back
evaluation.
to us
Yes,
anyway.
correct.
Okay?
I'm okay with that.
All right.
Any
So
comments on that?
let's ask the gentleman who owns house 87, I'm including this in what I just said a minute ago. 87, to have a Title V inspection because we have concerns about the separation between his septic and the well. Okay? Does that sound reasonable? Bingo.
And
all right.
I will second that,
All right.
and a roll call vote,
Patrick Tropiano, yes.
and Amy Vigan, yes.
All right, beautiful. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Make sure you fix that, thing though, okay?
In lieu of can we have two separate agreements?
Yeah, you can
for
do
the
so.
registry, rather than, or put all the words together, because it's gonna be hard to.
No, that's fine, as long as the,
I don't know what you, I'm sorry. What do you-
We have one deed restriction for the 2 bedrooms,
Yes.
and we need another one, which is usually supplied by the people from supplying the denitrification
yeah,
unit.
that's fine.
So rather than trying to blend the two together, two separate is okay.
I think you're good. We don't care how you do it as long as it gets done.
Sounds like a plan, we'll do it.
Sounds like a plan, man.
Yes.
Make
Yeah,
it
this
do-
had more wells on it than I've seen on any plan, I think.
Surprised us. We
That was
thought
just a
there'd be more
Tuesday in
people.
Lakeville.
Well, you know,
So
Every
wait,
day.
You know, Amy, you know what, one of the issues is that, for some reason or another, when we put sewer in, right? We as a town, we mandate that they have to connect to it, okay? So, they get to have to connect to it. Now, early on, they didn't do this. So when they put town water up there, they would have normally said, okay, it's mandatory, you have to connect, because that's what makes the cost of for everybody else. However, what happens is the mandating is problematic sometimes because of the district and the town. You know what I'm saying? And then it becomes a sort of an issue. Because the town, we have the right to mandate anything, and they have issues, and they kinda gotta meet together, and sometimes it just doesn't work.
But those mandates are typically about money, aren't they? Not about public health and
yes.
quality.
Almost
But they're
always.
mandate connections, in other words, so these people would have all been connected, because there's town water out there if there was a mandate that they had to connect. Then
Right,
we
and the
wouldn't be
only reason there's
talking
not a
about this.
mandate is because of the cost of the connection. If everybody said, we're gonna connect you for free, we mandate it and we're gonna connect you.
We mandate it no matter what the cost is. We don't care about what the cost is. We mandate sewer connections all the time. Some of them are 24, whatever, for things and everything else, and
I
it
don't,
doesn't matter.
but isn't that the reason why
Well, you
we
mandate
have-
the betterment cost, but not necessarily the
No,
connection.
we mandate the connection. The town can mandate the
You
connection.
can, but
Yes.
they don't always,
They,
so.
we always do it now. Early on, people didn't do it, but they always do it now.
A couple of years ago, this happened on my street, and a water main went down there.
Yeah.
Cause one person's well went dry, and they
Water,
wanted.
this is where the separation between the district and the town is sketchy, and that's why we have the problem with water as opposed to sewer and so on, which we have control over. See what I'm saying?
So they made me pay the betterment, but they didn't make me connect.
Right, because the water department chose not to do that, okay? But it's usually, see, the water department, they don't make any money on the betterment or anything, they make nothing. It doesn't help support their system, nothing. They make, just like the sewer, we don't make any money on the betterments, there's nothing, it's just spread out the cost of putting it in. In order to make, to help with the whole process, you have to have people connect. If they don't connect, then you don't have enough money to run the system. And you have to jack up the price on everybody else in order to do it. It's an enterprise fund, that's how you do it. Water's the same way. Water, they have to do the same thing. The more people that connect, the cheaper the water gets to be. So that's why they usually mandate it. When this doesn't happen, it's a problem.
And it, I mean, there are.
And obviously, it
It's
didn't
still about
happen.
money.
And it
It's-
shouldn't
it
have
is about-
anything to do with
But
money.
it is about money. If it didn't cost the people that own the home anything, they would all hook up immediately.
I mean, otherwise, the Board of Health should get involved, and we could look at things like this and see when water should be mandated and when it's about something else.
Right. I think most of the time it's about money.
It should always be mandated.
So
Yeah.
someone like me who had a well that I test all the time and I got, a separation of 160 feet to my well, I had to pay a betterment for a water line, but somebody else who has a well 40 feet away and is probably contaminated with nitrates and bacteria and God knows what else, PFAS and
Mhm.
arsenic, he's not mandated to connect. So there's a disconnect here about public health and fiscal
And who-
responsibility, I think.
Who sets that mandate?
The town.
Who's the town through who is it the
Town, when they create.
water
the-
department
when they
sets
cre-
that rule?
Well, the water department would do the water, but when there's, when you create a mandate, you do it through the betterment process when you're doing it, that it's mandatory you connect. they can't.
And who,
if- well, it-
rules on that? Is that the select,
No, it's a state regulation that allows you to do it.
right, but who decides it has to be done or not has to be done?
I told you, the town.
Right,
The selectmen decide everything relevant to the town.
but that was the question. So it's
And the
not, it
water
doesn't go to,
district,
it doesn't
yeah.
go to the, to a town meeting. It's decided by a
The
board of.
selectmen set all the parameters.
So can those mandates be changed? If there's a
Once-
mandate,
No, this is a problem we had, because we've had this happen. We had some that were not mandated somewhere along the way and people didn't connect. So what ends up happening then is down the road, the connection cost keeps going up. Or you run out where you don't have any more capacity and you can't put them on. So now they paid a betterment and they can't connect to something they paid for. And all of a sudden they need to, in a situation like this. It becomes a problem. These things get very, very out there and very sketchy. You know, let's say they put in water for everybody and they put all these waters in and everybody paid for the pipe, right? Now you wanna run the service, right, for everybody? Everybody pays for the service in their water fee, right? Let's say only 50% connected. You got a problem, right? You can't run the system.
but it would seem to make sense to me if there was initial mandate that not everybody had to be connected, that could be re-looked at by the town to change that if it becomes a problem.
Well, you can't change it after the fact, I can tell you that. We've had this issue already.
Well, the other issue I took with is calling it a betterment, because it's not always better.
Well, if you don't use
Especially for the person that has to pay for
Hey,
the
if you don't
betterment.
use it, it's, and these betterments, the sewer betterments getting really high. 24, 25 grand, and right now, if we did another sewer connection,
cheap.
it'd probably be 40 grand.
Just had one come in Mattapoisett, $80,000.
Well, there you go.
Per house.
This is
Wow.
per house.
And the state will
It's not
argue that
doing
sewer is better than a Title V
Nobody will vote for that
system.
in town meeting, it'll be, the people who would benefit from it are all gonna go in town meeting and vote against it.
Well, and that's what happens. I mean, see, this is where the problem runs out. It's a shame
But
because,
that's where I think the science should come into it, like if we're mandating, if somebody's on a cesspool with a well, that's a no-brainer, then the town should mandate water and sewer. But if they've got a 3-acre lot and there's no problem with the water or the septic system, and it's a fully compliant Title V system that was put in, in the
That's
last
fine.
10 years, you need to bring some science into these decisions, I think.
one of the saddest things is that back when they first started with putting sewer in everywhere, right? There was a reimbursement of 90% between the state and the federal government. They were reimbursing. Now, towns had the option to do their whole town for 10% of the cost. It was minuscule. This was back in the 70s. Minuscule amount of money. And they had companies like CDM and those companies who didn't want to do them all at once because they were, wanted the business along the way. And so they go in and they talk to all these towns. And by the way, I was on a board when I went at the time, and I said, listen, we got to do this all now, why we can pay for it. And the particular town I'm talking about right this minute doesn't have only one section connected to this day as a result of it. Because they didn't get it at the time, because CDM said, oh no, let's not connect it, everybody together. And so all the towns missed out, all of us.
Those darn engineers.
Thank you for coming.
Sad.
Nice talking to you all.
Good to see you again, Rick.
Sorry, I led into a bigger job than what we had.
No, it's
So
good.
that
Good
it certainly
conversation.
opens up a can of worms and something that we should probably, it would be nice to have a conversation on our, sometime about this whole issue where it's on our, where we have some time to talk about it again, because it's a huge issue then for
Yeah, there's some
understanding.
places that absolutely need water and sewer, like the trailer park probably.
Yeah.
Well, most of the
Um,
trailer parks are getting stuff, so.
And we had spoken before about education for those of us that are new on the board, and I'm still learning on that's not what I do for a living, is Title V, so we certainly, one thing that I thought is at the end of or any questions on the Title V, it's certainly good to, we have experts here that maybe if that works that way, at the end of each section or at the end of it, if folks have questions that were, or during it, ask. I think we have people that can teach us.
Yeah, but wells too and soils, it all comes together. It's all related and there's a lot of overlap, especially with the housing code that we deal with too. I mean, these things we can condemn a house if it doesn't have adequate septic or water.
So, speaking of all of that, our next, on number 5 is discussion on Title V regulations regarding nitrogen.
Yeah, remember that thing you talked about? I think Patrick has it together.
There should be, costs in your packets as
You
well.
wanna, make
There
your,
are.
Patrick has a point though that is probably a good one, that somebody you need to talk about.
So I went through, made the changes, they are in your packets as requested.
Do we see them? Are they highlighted or
They're not.
Not being
they're
that.
not?
They were on page
Highlighted or bold or something if it's a
On page 2, item K, the wetlands was being changed to tidally influenced. Page 3, E, that was gonna be changed from operating permit to certificate of compliance.
What number was it?
E.
E?
E, so that says certificate of compliance now. And then at the end of E, on the next page, just removing that prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit. So the issue I ran into
This is it.
in reviewing it, changing the definition of wetlands to tidally influenced wetlands in A creates a bit of a clash with M and the definitions that are in the multitude of referenced wetlands laws.
And that's the problem.
It was probably too vast to begin with.
And did we look up, I know we spoke about looking up the various codes and chapters to be sure that they were all still actual and,
I've been through all of these, they're all still,
okay,
and they all have a different definition and a different designation and a different setback and a different
That's a hard-
requirement. So that's probably removing that entirely would solve
Can-
the issue.
Just remove it completely.
From surface water definition.
Yeah.
No, remove M entirely, where it references 2 state regs, our local regs, as well as the federal. It creates kind of a conundrum in its own.
But we could also eliminate the wetlands in K. We don't need tidally influenced wetland. I was just trying to think of a way to make it more in line with what the intent of the regulation was, but really, a surface water isn't a wetland necessarily. A wetland can be a surface water, but a surface water, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's not synonymous.
well, estuaries is very close, that helps.
I think M actually makes it worse. Cause if you start referencing all these different MGLs and, the federal.
Why
water-
are we defining wetlands? That's not our specialty, so why don't we leave that to the state to define wetlands?
It would be fine if we defined it, but we didn't, we just put all the different sections that have the
Right.
word
It
wetland
just
in them.
confused the issue more.
I agree with taking that out altogether.
All
I
three
think
of them
most people
clash,
know
yeah.
what a wetland is, but if you need the definition, you look it up on the state.
Well, and there's all these rules that they can follow if they have to.
Well, a lot of these are all defined in Title V. I mean, do we have to define soil absorption system and surface water and new construction? It's already defined in Title V. So maybe we should just refer to Title V definitions for some of these and we could shorten our regs even more. You don't
I
need to be
think,
redefining the state definitions.
When we looked at them not too long ago, if I remember correctly, they are just copy and pasted.
So it's almost silly.
Except for surface water.
Except for surface water and wetlands. And then L is our own.
Yeah, every town's a little different on those. Falmouth has some crazy
Yeah,
aquifer protection areas. We have some in Stoughton too.
if our definitions are not changed, you could keep them, but also the definitions per Title V. So that people know it's the same, so when they're looking at it, the only difference would be that tidally influenced wetland, which we could. Right, that's
Yeah, that
what was
is-
the only difference, either way, I don't have a problem with having definitions in there, but it's probably less work just to leave them as, at this point, and take out the M.
I think it's just as a quick reference, if you only have this open
Yeah.
versus reading our stuff and then going back to Title V, you at least have the bulk of what you need in this one small packet.
Was there any other changes? Was that it?
I think the only other one I proposed was, if you go to page 4, removing section F, I think it's talking about the operating permit that is really a certificate of compliance that we have at the beginning of E.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of redundancy.
I'm not even sure if ever a permit of such ever existed and that you could renew it or transfer it. Not really sure.
I think we need to spend a little more time with these.
I think the intent of the F is that new ownership is aware and starts fresh, right?
I think maybe it would have been, but there is no operating permit that we issue other than the original permit for installation and then the ongoing operation and maintenance contracts, but we don't.
Only for the only for the D-Night systems.
Right.
So I think this was in reference to the D-Night systems.
But there is no operating permit for them technically.
Just the contract. So maybe the wording needs to be changed and it would do what, I think that was the original intent when we originally did this.
Or maybe it meant the operation and maintenance contract?
Yes, I think that's what, that,
Sometimes they're 2-year contracts or
Right, I
3-year
wouldn't- I
contracts,
wouldn't-
so.
Want to specify
Right.
renewal if you, the 3-year contract already paid for.
that's already in the,
But is a
in-
contract null and void if it changes? Because the contract is with a certain person, right? Or does it run with the property, or does it run with the person that signed the
run with the
contract?
property.
With the property usually.
They run with the property.
The system, I should say, usually.
Yeah, so that whoever's taking care of it, they'll transfer it from one person to the next. But then they'll want money from them when the time for renewal too.
Or they'll just stop paying them and then that's what normally happens.
Well, that's true. I mean,
And they get a nasty letter from George in Barnstable County.
well, this,
I agree, I think the way it's written right now, the F doesn't make sense, that it has to be renewed.
right,
That the new owner should be aware of it makes sense. But that's already in.
The deed reference.
The deed reference, right?
yeah,
So maybe we just leave that out and make GF.
yeah, we don't need that. That can come up. If we wanna leave it in, we'd have to change its structure to make it mean something.
Right.
Or define operation
Yeah,
permit.
Right.
exactly. Define operation. That's a good idea.
So just get rid of it, that's the easiest thing to do.
That's what I'd say.
And again, part 12, because we discussed this briefly tonight, and I still agree with that. Our RLS, a registered land surveyor stamp, should be required on any proposed or as-built plan for lots less than 20,000 square feet. And that I still think that makes good sense, that you have somebody who is
This-
trained at that.
Well, this wouldn't have helped us with what we did earlier, because this is an as-built, and what we were getting was a proposed plan, not an as-built, so one and the two are not the same.
And
It's registered on an as-built that requires a.
Next page.
Huh? Oh, does it move up? The land surveyor shall be required on lots. Good, I didn't catch that. Good thing you caught. Yeah,
There's
so
accidentally
it's, so it's
put
there
people on it.
twice,
Right.
so that makes sense now.
And then it has the caveat within 5 feet to give them some wiggle room.
Yeah, right,
Like on this one, I think it was only 6 feet to the property line.
yeah,
So we waive it a lot as a board if it's like 15 feet or more from the property line. Then that's plenty of wiggle room, that we're not too worried about it.
yeah.
But if they're less than, or right at 10 feet, I think he had minimum setbacks at 10 on the other sides and a 6-foot reduction. So
Yeah, the 6 foot was the problem.
if you're off with your bearing or anything,
Oh,
one little degree,
well, especially if
never-
you're not a land surveyor, so.
Well, we had an engineer who here unfortunately, Mr. Ferrera, and he was able to just look at one of our plans and said right off that those numbers aren't right. He was an engineer and could tell. And I think after that, that's when we sort of, when we were on, when we talked about the getting the RLS stamp on it, and I think it's a good idea. So,
Okey-dokey.
any other comments on these? Yeah, good.
You know, since we're talking about regulations, though, have the regulations for piercing and what do you call it, come back from town council yet?
No,
And when do we expect that to happen?
they have,
It's Rich.
It's Rich.
can we ask him from us?
Rich, I can-
If he
I
can
can
give us a,
Prod him for an
We
update,
could give him a
absolutely.
call and
yes,
see how
given
he's
it,
doing with it.
I'm sure he's read them. If he,
Oh, he reads everything, believe me. He may have ideas in his head he wants to change, but he reads everything.
so this title Board of Health, you'll redo it, and then it'll come up for a vote once it's comes clear again. Wonderful. Health agents report.
absolutely. Nothing super exciting in there, just the usual stuff, to be honest. Disease reporting, we do have a few upticks in some cases for communicable diseases. Our nurse is working on those right now. We actually were just chatting about it today. Title V review and variances, 3 conventional Title V plan reviews done. It's kind of the
What kind of communicable diseases, excuse me? You knew I was gonna ask that.
We have some
STDs or
a little mix of everything.
mix of everything?
Yeah, we would
I'd
say-
always be I'd be very interested in seeing that data, what she gets, even if it's just in format for
We
the
can-
board, but
We can do that for you, absolutely.
Any measles?
No, we're safe with the measles.
definitely all the regular flu and COVID and all of those are out there.
Those are out there as well,
STDs are
absolutely.
always out there that I haven't looked at.
Population are we talking about?
Hmm?
What population? are we
Wareham
talking
population.
As a whole?
I don't know if he has, I'm sure I'm sure the nurse has age categories, but
Depends on which one. One's a lot older, one's a lot younger. One I don't recall.
okay.
I can look back here in my emails that I'm.
And speaking of disease reporting, we have the epidemiologist still coming in January, February?
We do. She has a
Since
very
we-
nice report put together
Wonderful.
that will outline a whole other host of issues we can discuss.
Wonderful.
Perk tests, we've had 2 upgrade perk tests done. No emergency response. Same as continuing our 2024 restaurant inspections. Beachwater is wrapped up. No court cases. We just talked about the nurse. She's doing a fantastic job. Fairness Coalition, we recently had a drill. We participated doing our part in the drill.
Where's the town stand right now? And we, as the Board of Health, on emergencies, winter emergencies? For example, hurricane season has passed, but like the one that we had many years ago that you and I remember when it was 0 degrees out and snow, and we had a lot of people in the community center.
I've handed off a majority of all of the emergency management stuff to the new emergency management director. I know he's very busy. He's jumped in with 2 feet and maybe overwhelmed himself a little bit, but he's working away at it. We have our own usual contingencies that we work through. as far as working with some of our partner businesses to do food purchasing. We get water through donations from different stores locally to set up our shelter next door, and we'll continue to staff the shelter as needed.
So the Board of Health will continue. This one, and not all of you were here then, but we had quite a storm, and it was 90% of the towns in the area did not have electricity for 4 or 5 days.
It's actually a warming center.
And,
Warming
right,
center,
warming
yeah.
center.
Let's not call it a shelter.
And because of ice, rain, ice, and super cold and snow. And that, you know, a lot of folks from the Board of Health were there for extended periods of time. And we did get a lot of restaurants to give food and all that. And we had at one point up to 100 people in the warming shelter until we were able to get buses to take people elsewhere. But it, you know, I just wanted everyone to be aware that it doesn't happen. That was the only time that we've had it happen that I remember, where we
We
had
had one
such a busy,
We had one more, it was a smaller group, but I
they were like,
stayed here for a few nights.
And before you guys were here.
Right.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
We've used that facility many times. In fact, I
Oh.
spent the night there as sort of, you know, trying to help out.
Yeah.
A couple
And
of
whether-
times over the years.
and whether we get called down or how that whole process happens,
Yeah.
so whether it's worth having the emergency, if they just take over it now, or they're gonna call us and then all the board members would be aware, that sort of be nice for everyone to know.
It'll probably go back to the way it was before. He'll reach out to us and then I'll start firing off emails and phone calls.
Okay.
Hopefully, we're gonna continue to work on maybe getting that facility upgraded, and then maybe the Red Cross will be involved, but that's a future idea.
Okay,
Hopefully one day.
perfect.
And it's almost rental season. That's it. Almost there.
I have nothing new right now on infectious disease. We've already spoken, nothing has changed this month.
Is COVID on the rise?
It's just there. I don't think it's really, I haven't looked at
Did you
the,
get a spike from Thanksgiving?
we usually do, but
Couple
I
more days.
haven't, you know, we had it a lot before. People are not wearing masks much at
Maybe
all.
they're just not testing anymore.
And I think a lot of people just say it's a cold and aren't testing, so they
Right.
don't know if it's the flu, COVID, RSV, or one of the other viral
I
illnesses.
think you're correct in that. I know
Yeah.
people myself, nobody's testing anymore.
No.
They don't even bother.
They don't wanna know. Kinda like well water.
Kind of like well water. Announcements, anyone? Maybe just that our next, while we're on that, our next meeting is, will be the 18th,
18th, yeah.
right, okay. Oh, we think of it? On the discussion and possible vote on the meeting minutes from we'll start with November 6th, we have November 6th, and November 20th.
Move approval of both November 6th and November 20th.
And I second that, roll call vote,
Yeah, Patrick Tropiano, yes.
and Amy did, I guess.
No 48-hour business. Move adjournment.
I second that,
Patrick Tropiano, yes.
Amy did, yes.
Beautiful.
Thank you, we're all set.
Thank you.